Why did the people at the cross not catch that Jesus was referring to Psalms 22 when he spoke his last words? Like how did they miss that? It's so obvious to us that that was the reference. How was it missed by them? Like why did they think that he was calling out to Elijah? So that's something that that's what we're going to address today. We're going to talk about this, and yeah, let's jump into it. Let's hit that theme music and let's get into it. All right, I want to thank y'all for joining me. Been a heavy week, right? Very, very heavy week. Last week I filmed Wednesday morning and had it uploaded on YouTube Wednesday morning, and then the Charlie Kirk assassination happened that afternoon, so I didn't address that last week. But again, it's something that's been huge, so has to be addressed. And I want to address it by just a word of encouragement that the Bible tells us that we'll be persecuted for truth, that we'll be persecuted for the gospel. And Charlie Kirk stood on both of those things. The Bible also tells us don't mourn like those who have no hope, and Thessalonians. So we can take hope in that. And the Bible tells us that we can have a hope of a resurrection in Him, and we cling to that. And we look at Charlie Kirk and others, and he knew his stuff. He was very sharp. And what I want for us is us to take that and go, okay, let's be sharp. Let's know our stuff. And so with that, let's go to Scripture. Let's go to Scripture and take a look at what we're going to be in today so that we can sharpen ourselves. I'm at the wrong. All right, here we go. We are going to be talking about the death of Jesus and Jesus's actual last, his last words, or last words according to Mark. And I'm going to make myself a little smaller in this window here. So, yep, there we go. All right. We're going to look at his last words according to Mark, and so yeah, let's take a look at this. It says at noon. I'm gonna have to read on this screen, so I'm gonna have to turn a little bit, and it's gonna be weird. I hope it's not too weird. Actually, this is what I'm gonna do so that it's not distracting to you all. At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. At 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani." It's my God, which means my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of those standing near heard this, they said, "Listen, he is calling out to Elijah." Someone ran, filled a sponge with vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes down, he said. So what we have here is Jesus is crying out. His last words are a reference to Psalm 22, and so and it's super obvious, right? It's super obvious to us that this is a reference to Psalm 22, and it's weird almost that the ones who were there didn't catch on that this was a reference to Psalm 22. And that has actually been an argument against, hey, that's not what Jesus was talking about. So let's look at that, and let's look at why potentially they didn't catch on that this was Psalm 22. But first, let's look at the significance of Psalm 22 and why it's significant that Jesus was referring to Psalm 22. So let's go back to Scripture. I'm going to grab Psalm 22 real quick. And I'm going to read some of this. I'm not going to read the entire psalm, but I'm going to read the parts of it that are super, super pertinent. So I'm going to cut my camera off real quick. And it says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? So far from my quiet cries of anguish, my God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer. By night, I find no rest. Verse 7, it says, all who seek me mock me. They hurl insults at me, shaking their head. He trusts in the Lord, they say. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. And so what we see here is like exactly what's going on is Jesus, Jesus is up on the cross and they're saying, hey, if he trusts in God, let God deliver him. This is exactly the narrative that is being said as Jesus is on the cross that we find in Psalm 22. That's it. Already, this is getting wild. Okay. This is getting eerie already. So let's go on down, and it says, many bulls surround me, strong bulls of Bashan encircle me, roaring lions that tear at their prey. Their mouths are wide against me. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart has turned to wax. It is melted within me. And so here we have a reference to when Jesus is his side is pierced and water flows out, like his water flows out of me and my heart is turned to wax. This is a direct reference to that. It has to be. It's so like what else is David talking about here? This is wild. So let's continue on. He says, I'm poured out like water. My heart is turned to wax. My mouth is dried up like potsherd. My tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You lay me in the dust of death. Again, talking about being thirsty, as we see that Jesus was clearly thirsty. Look at 16. Let's look at this. This is wild. Dogs surround me. A pack of villains encircle me. They pierce my hands and feet. All my bones are on display. People stare at me. They gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them, and they cast lots for my garments. He is saying they pierce my hands and feet. So this is written by David 1,000 years before the crucifixion of Jesus. These words were written 1,000 years before Jesus went to the cross. Crucifixion was not even a thing when David wrote this. Like, it didn't exist. David had never seen anything like a crucifixion, like a Roman or Persian crucifixion. Like David had never. This is completely foreign to him. And yet he is describing what happens to Jesus in this crazy detail of you pierce my hands and feet. Like, what does that mean? What's that mean in David's context? No clue what that means in David's context. It says you cast lots from our garments. What does that mean in David's context? We have no clue what that means in David's context. But in Jesus's context, in the context of the cross, all of a sudden this makes really good sense. So this is the question. How did they miss it? How did they not catch what Jesus is talking about? How did this not click? Well, a couple of theories have been brought up, and they're good theories. And the one that I want to give one an honorable mention, if you would. And that is that at this point, Jesus is so dehydrated. He is so weak that he can't enunciate clear enough that people really understand what he's saying, and they only kind of catch the first couple syllables, and they think that he's calling out to Elijah. Hey, there's really nothing wrong with that. I don't think that was the case, but hey, it's just as good of an explanation as what I'm about to give you. But I want to give you another explanation that's a little bit harder to explain, but I don't know. We'll let you hear it. So let's go back to the scripture. I'm going to cut the cam off. And so, yeah, let's go back to actually what Mark records. And what Mark records here is, the way Mark records it is Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani. And honestly, it is easier to read that in Greek than it is in English. So let me find it. Let me find it. Where? Oh, there we go. So here we have Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani. It's exactly the same, right? And so you go, well, why is it exactly the same? Why does, like, if it's Greek, why does it sound exactly like what it says in English? Well, because what it is it's a Greek transliteration of Hebrew, and what we have is an English transliteration of Greek. So we have an English transliteration of a Greek transliteration of Hebrew. And typically these get wonky, right? This one is not actually terrible because the English to Greek flows really, really well, actually. On this one, we can reproduce this one pretty good in English. But these are not Greek words like Eloi, lema. Those are not words in Greek. Those are they are Hebrew words, and Mark is trying to spell them with Greek letters and Greek syllables. And so let's look at the Hebrew, and let's look at like kind of how it's actually pronounced in the Hebrew, or I can't do exactly how it's pronounced, but kind of closer to how it was probably pronounced in the Hebrew. And so let's jump over to this one. So this is, no, not that one, this one. So this is Psalm 22, and then I've got the Hebrew over on the other side. Got to scroll back up. Well, that's Psalm 21, too far. All right. My God, why have you forsaken me? And so when we go to the Hebrew, it's Eli, Eli, lema zav tane. Yeah. I'm still having to sound this out, so bear with me. Lema, all right. Eli, Eli, lema ha zav tane. So you can probably hear, even though I didn't do this justice right, you can probably hear the similarity there, but you can also hear, all right, there's some slight differences. And so with that, something else that we have to keep in mind is that at this time, the common Hebrew people no longer spoke that type of Hebrew. They spoke Aramaic. It's a more, I guess what you could call it was more of like a modern type of Hebrew of that time. That's not the Hebrew that they spoke. Now they may have been able to recognize it, but it's not what they spoke. And so the only time that they would have heard it like that is they go to the synagogue and have it read from the Torah, and it would have been read from the Torah exactly in Hebrew. If you are a Hebrew Jew, you would went to the synagogue, and if we were open to that passage of scripture, it would have been read in Hebrew and then likely translated and explained in Aramaic by the rabbi. But only the rabbi would have really known how to read that in Aramaic or in Hebrew. And so even a Jew at this point, they may have known the meaning of this. However, they might not have actually recognized it in Hebrew unless like it was like last Saturday's Torah lesson. You see what I'm saying? Because they would have heard it in Hebrew, but then it would have been explained in Aramaic. And so that is one possibility. Now, if you were a Hellenistic Jew, if you were a Jew that was more Greek in culture, especially if you weren't from Jerusalem, you've probably never heard it this way, because your Old Testament would have been the Septuagint. And let's jump to that. Let's see what that says. And so let's go to the scripture. And so the Septuagint And I'm saying that wrong. I always say that wrong. I say stuff wrong. So y'all just bear with me. I say stuff wrong. And this is, I'm telling y'all how stuff was pronounced, and I can't pronounce stuff in English. And I promise you, the irony of that is not lost on me. Anyhow, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? This is what a Hellenistic Jew, the Septuagint, and this is what they would have had. What they would have had was, instead of reading the scriptures directly from Hebrew, they had a Greek translation of the Old Testament called the Septuagint. That is what most Hellenistic Jews used. That is what most of the New Testament writers, whenever they refer to scripture, they refer to the Septuagint. And so this is what, if you are a Hellenistic Jew out here and you are thinking about Psalms 22, this is the way it sounds to you. It goes hatheos, hatheos, mu, proxkes, moi, hina, ti, eg, kat, elepes, me. There we go. And again, I'm not trying to be exact on that. I'm trying to be close. But even without exact, it is much different. Hatheos, mu is a lot different than what Jesus says on the cross. So if you're a Hellenistic Jew, you likely have no clue what Jesus says. And so I could really see a Hellenistic Jew who is used to hearing Psalms 22, hatheos, mu, not catching what Jesus is saying at all and going, why is he calling out to Elijah? Because even in Septuagint, Elijah would have been transliterated. The proper noun would be transliterated, and it would sound like Elijah, or closer to Elijah. So for me, this is why I think that they missed it. And they go and they get the sponge, and they more of the challenges, more of all the things. So why did Jesus say it in Hebrew? Why did Jesus call out in that way? More importantly, who in the crowd, when Jesus said this, would have immediately gotten it, would have immediately known what he was talking about? And that's what's interesting about Jesus and about what he said here. Jesus said this, a direct reference to Psalms 22, likely knowing that probably none of the Hellenistic Jews that were in the crowd, which there probably was many, none of them would have caught what he was saying. None of them would have caught the reference. Many of the regular Jewish people would not have caught the reference. But the ones who would have definitely caught the reference were the Pharisees and Sadducees. The Sanhedrin, the ones who put him on that cross, they caught the reference. They knew exactly what Jesus was talking about. And could you imagine? Because at this point, I really don't think that they knew that Jesus knew ancient Hebrew. I mean, they criticize his disciples later on in Acts. They say they're unlearned, right? Remember, they're unlearned Galileans. And the Jews from Jerusalem have this kind of stuck up mentality about them anyhow. I don't know. The fact that Jesus even said this in perfect Hebrew probably shocked them to begin with. But then what he says, he starts referencing Psalm 22. And they remember the pierced hands and feet. That's what David was talking about. They remember, they're watching, as he's saying this, they're watching the Roman soldiers split his garments up and going, that's what David was talking about. This is it. Could you imagine? Could you imagine the unsettledness? Because at the point, there's no denying it. And I believe that's the reason why Jesus cried this out in Hebrew, kind of in a code where likely the only people who really called it were the Pharisees and Sadducees. I could not imagine how terrifying that must have been to realize. Because at this point, in your heart of hearts, you know you just sent the Messiah to the cross. You've got to. Like at this point, if you are a Pharisee or you're a Sadducee and you see this, you hear it, it clicks, and I could imagine how terrifying this was to realize that was him. And I yelled, crucify him. I had a part in his arrest. I had a part in his trial. They're without excuse. So I'll say this to us. Likewise, we're without excuse. We have Jesus quoting Psalm 22 from the cross. Psalm 22, that was written 1,000 years before Jesus went to the cross. Probably 600 to 500 years before crucifixion was even a thing. Describing in specific detail what crucifixion was going to be like and what Jesus's crucifixion was like. We have the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have carbon-14 dated copies of Psalm 22. To be carbon-14 dated, to be scientifically proven to be at least 200 years older than Jesus. That these were written at least 200 years before Jesus went to the cross. We are without excuse. We cannot, with this type of knowledge, we cannot stick our head in the dirt and go, well, who knows? There's not enough evidence. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. And to be presented with that and to say there's not enough evidence, you are really sticking your head in the sand. So my challenge to you is I believe that Jesus crying out Psalm 22, the beginning of Psalm 22 on the cross, I believe that was for, in the immediate, I believe that was for the Pharisees and Sadducees who were there because they were the ones who have caught it. But I believe it's for us as evidence. And for us, we have the scholarly ability to know what that means. And now you know what that means. So now you've got to decide what you're going to do with that knowledge. To go, it's all real. It all happened. It's a prophecy talking specifically about this. That's evidence that this thing is real and it's true and it was inspired by God. And it has stuff in it that like literally tells the future and the future that has already come true. This has to be a word from God. And with that, I'm going to submit my life to it. All right. Hope that my butchering of Greek and Hebrew didn't throw you off too much. And I hope that you learned from this. And I hope this has encouraged you. And don't be, because I believe in this moment that the Pharisees and Sadducees, like they realized, like we're going to see next week where the Roman guard goes, yep, he was the Son of God. And I believe that the Pharisees and Sadducees at that moment saw it too, but their hearts had been hardened at that point. Take this, synthesize it, realize it, submit your life to God. Submit your life to the one that died for you. Anyhow, love you guys. I hope y'all are having a great week. Persevere, hang in there, and I'll see y'all next week. Here comes that theme music that we love so much in the intro.